My sister's secret lie. My own family didn't know I was married, and my sister thought she'd gotten away with it until Thanksgiving dinner. The notification on my phone was a simple, brutal reminder: Family Thanksgiving, tomorrow, 3 p.m. The text was in the group chat I was still technically in, a digital ghost at the feast. I hadn't responded to a message there in over a year. The last one had been a flurry of photos from Amelia's wedding, an event I had pointedly not attended, citing a critical work deadline. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had scheduled a particularly grueling data analysis for that weekend, needing the cold, hard logic of numbers to counteract the messy, emotional hurricane that was my family. I felt David's hand on my shoulder, his presence a solid, calming force behind me. "You don't have to go, he said, his voice soft. He'd been saying some variation of this for weeks. I leaned back against him, watching the Seattle rain paint gray streaks down our apartment window. Our apartment, a space we had painted together, filled with books we'd both read and photographs of our life, hiking in the Cascades, laughing at a friend's wedding, the quiet, sun-drenched morning after we'd moved in. It was a home, not just a house. It was everything my childhood home had never been. I know, I sighed. But a part of me feels like I have to. It's been almost 2 years. Maybe something has changed. David didn't argue. He knew this was a demon I had to face, a door I had to close myself. He just squeezed my shoulder. "Then I'll have a pot of tea waiting for you when you get back. The good, spicy chai you like." That was David. He didn't try to fight my battles for me. He just made sure I had a soft place to land afterward. The 4-hour drive south the next day was a journey through a landscape of my own memories. I passed the exit for the university where I'd gotten my master's, a ceremony my parents had attended but spent mostly on their phones, coordinating Amelia's travel plans for a sorority formal. I drove through the town where I'd bought my first car, a moment of fierce independence they'd dismissed as a waste of money. With every mile, the weight on my chest grew heavier. I pulled into the driveway of the house I'd grown up in. It looked the same, impeccably landscaped, with a perfectly manicured lawn that screamed of effort and appearance. My father's sedan was in the driveway, alongside Jason's obnoxiously large luxury SUV. My beat-up, practical hatchback looked like an orphan next to them. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the bottle of wine I'd brought, a nice Pinot Noir from a Washington vineyard I loved, and walked to the door. I didn't ring the bell. I just walked in, as I always had. The smell hit me first, the familiar scent of roasting turkey, my mother's perfume, and the underlying note of lemon-scented polish. It was the aroma of my childhood, and it triggered a confusing mix of nostalgia and dread. "Chloe, you're here!" my mother exclaimed, emerging from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron that was far too pristine for actual cooking. She air-kissed my cheek, her eyes already scanning me, taking in my simple wool sweater and dark jeans. I saw the slight flicker of disapproval. I wasn't dressed for a performance. "Hi, Mom," I said, handing her the wine. "Oh, thank you, dear," she said, placing it on the counter without looking at the label. "Amelia and Jason are in the living room. Go say hello." The command was gentle but firm. The script was beginning. I walked into the living room. Amelia was perched on the edge of the sofa, showing Jason something on her phone. She looked like she'd stepped out of a catalog for aspirational living. Cashmere sweater, perfectly tailored slacks, her blonde hair styled in effortless waves. Her diamond ring, a massive solitaire, caught the light as she gestured. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence," Amelia said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. The elusive Chloe. "Hi, Amelia, Jason," I said, nodding at him. "Chloe," Jason replied with a curt nod, already returning his attention to his own phone. He was a handsome man in a sharp, generic way, like a stock photo of successful attorney. The next hour was a masterclass in familial, subtle aggression. My father emerged from his study, gave me a brief, awkward hug, and asked about the traffic. Before I could finish my sentence, my mother launched into the first of many soliloquies about Amelia's wedding. And the flowers alone, Frank, can you believe it? More than your first car. And the venue, the Belmont Manor, has a 5-year waiting list, but Jason, of course, knows the owner. Amelia preened. It's all about connections, Mom. It's a perk of the job. I busied myself with setting the table, aligning the silverware with a precision I usually reserved for lab equipment. Each piece placed was a small act of control. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for a reaction, a sign of envy or defeat. I gave them nothing. When we finally sat down to eat, the air was thick with unspoken words. The turkey, as I knew it would be, was dry. My mother had never mastered the art of not overcooking poultry. It was a family joke, but one that was only ever directed at me. I was the one who supposedly couldn't cook. A narrative they clung to, despite the fact that I hosted dinner parties for my friends all the time. The cranberry sauce felt like a lead weight in the cut glass dish. As I passed it to Amelia, her ring flashed, a tiny, dazzling weapon. "Thanks, Chloe," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. And then it began in earnest. The review of Amelia's wedding, the guest list, the RSVP rate. I ate my dry turkey, my jaw tight. This was the dance. They talked at me, and I was supposed to play my part, the quiet, slightly disappointing audience member. My dad, ever the peacemaker or perhaps just the avoider, tried to draw me in. "Chloe, the ceremony was really something. You missed a special day." I met his gaze. I'm sure it was lovely. The word was neutral, a stone dropped into a pond. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Lovely? It was the social event of the decade. The mayor was there, for heaven's sake, the Carters, the Whitmans, everyone who matters. Amelia's smile was a razor blade. We had 320 guests. The response was almost perfect. Almost everyone we invited showed up. I took a slow, deliberate sip of wine. The trap was being laid. I could feel its mechanics clicking into place. Each boastful comment a tooth in the jaw. After 28 years of being the punchline, you develop a sixth sense for these things. Then the tone shifted. Amelia turned to me, and her expression morphed into one of faux concern. The one she practiced in the mirror, I was sure. "So, Chloe," she began, her voice dripping with condescending pity, "any plans to finally settle down? You're not getting any younger, you know." There it was, the question I had been waiting for. My mother, playing her part perfectly, jumped in. "She's been with that boyfriend for a while now. What's his name again? Jacob? Jeremy?" I looked at her, this woman who had given birth to me, and saw a stranger. "David," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "Right, David," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "And what does he do again? Something with computers?" "He's a lead software architect at a major tech firm," I said. "He leads a team of developers." Amelia let out a little laugh, a sound like shattering crystal. "Oh, that's right, the computer guy." She turned to Jason. "Does he even own a suit, honey?" Jason offered a polite, complicit chuckle. My father, I noticed, was suddenly intensely interested in the pattern on his plate. His silence was a betrayal I felt deep in my bones. He never joined the attacks, but he never stopped them either. His passive presence in the face of their active cruelty was its own special kind of wound. "So, when's the big day?" Amelia pressed, her eyes gleaming. She was a shark that had scented blood. "Is he getting cold feet? Men can sense desperation, you know. It's a real turnoff." That was the aha moment. The air left the room. All the noise, the clattering plates, the hum of the refrigerator, it all faded into a dull buzz. My heart was a wild drum against my ribs, but a strange calm settled over me. This was it. The moment I had both dreaded and meticulously planned for. I carefully, quietly, placed my fork down on the edge of my plate. The sound was infinitesimal, but in the quiet, it was like a gavel strike. "Actually," I said, and the word cut through the thick atmosphere like a laser, "we're already married." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a physical presence, heavy and suffocating. I could see the dust motes dancing in a shaft of afternoon light, frozen in time. 4 faces stared at me, a gallery of shock. My mother's mouth was a perfect O of disbelief. My father's eyebrows had disappeared into his hairline. Jason looked intrigued, the lawyer in him momentarily overpowering the son-in-law. And Amelia's face was a blank slate of pure, unadulterated panic. You, what? My mother finally managed to choke out. I got married 7 months ago, I repeated, my voice unnervingly steady. May 12th to be exact. That's impossible, Amelia whispered, her voice strangled. You didn't. We would have. You were all invited, I stated, picking up my wine glass and taking a small, casual sip. The wine was bitter on my tongue. Every one of you. The father found his voice a hoarse, confused sound. Oh, we never received any invitation. We would have come. You have to believe that. I do believe that you didn't see them, Dad, I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My fingers, which should have been trembling, moved across the screen with a practiced, fluid accuracy. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times. Let me show you something. So I opened the folder I had labeled evidence. The first image was a screenshot of a certified mail tracking page. 5 items, 5 addresses, all with a status of delivered and a timestamp of March 18th, 11:15 a.m. Do you see this? I asked, turning the phone so my father could see the screen. His eyes, still wide with shock, scanned the information. This is a signature confirmation from the post office. 5 invitations sent to everyone at this table. Someone at this address signed for every single one of them. I let that hang in the air for a beat before I zoomed in on the signature line. The loopy, exaggerated cursive was as familiar to me as my own. I think we all recognize that signature. Amelia's face, already pale, lost all remaining color. She looked like a ghost. That could be for anything, my mother said, her voice shrill and defensive. A package, a magazine. It could be, I agreed calmly. I swiped to the next screenshot. This is the order confirmation from the stationer. Custom, letterpressed invitations. Purchase in January, delivered to my apartment in March. Another swipe. And here's my credit card statement from that same day, showing a charge for USPS Priority Mail Express with signature confirmation for 5 separate deliveries. I paid extra to ensure they got here safely and that I would have proof. Emily. My father's voice was low, but it carried a new terrifying hardness. Did you sign for a piece of mail addressed to your mother and me? I don't remember, she stammered, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. It was months ago. Let me help you remember, I said, and I was amazed at the cool, detached tone of my own voice. All those years of high school drama, of pretending to be someone else, had finally paid off in the most surreal way possible. March 18th was a Thursday. You stopped by in the morning to drop off that necklace for Mom's birthday before your flight to Austin for that conference. You offered to get the mail while you were here. You always do that when you come over. How could you possibly know that? Jason demanded, leaning forward, his protective instincts kicking in. The defense attorney was on the case. Because I called Mom that afternoon, I explained, my gaze still locked on Amelia. I called to confirm she'd received the invitation. She told me the only mail that had come were some catalogs and bills. I thought that was strange, because the tracking information showed a delivery and a signature at 11:15 a.m. So, a few days later, I went back online and pulled up the scanned signature. And I knew it was yours. Amelia's face was now a blotchy, ugly red. You had me investigated, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. I called the post office and asked them to email me the proof of delivery scan, I corrected her mildly. It's a free service, hardly an FBI-level operation. I took another sip of wine. But you still haven't answered Dad's question. Did you sign for our mail? This is ridiculous, Amelia yelled, pushing her chair back so violently it screeched against the hardwood floor. I don't have to sit here and be accused like some kind of criminal. Sit down. The voice was my father's, but it was a version of him I had never heard. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp and cold as ice, cracking through the room like a whip. The authority in it was absolute. Even Jason flinched. Amelia, looking utterly stunned, slowly sank back into her chair. My father turned to me, his expression a turbulent mix of confusion, hurt, and a dawning, horrible understanding. "Why, Chloe?" he asked, his voice softer now, but laced with pain. "Why didn't you just tell us? Even if the invitations were lost, you could have called, you could have driven over. We're your family." This was the core of it. The question I had known was coming, the one I had prepared for in therapy for weeks before I'd even agreed to this dinner. My therapist, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, had made me role-play this exact moment. "I did call Dad," I said, my voice still impossibly calm, a stark contrast to the storm I could feel brewing inside me. "I called several times." I opened my phone's call log, a history I had been meticulously saving and backing up for this precise purpose. The first time was April 2nd. That was after 4 weeks of radio silence. "Mom, you answered. I asked if you'd gotten the invitation. You said you were swamped with the final preparations for Amelia's bridal shower and that you'd call me back later that week." I looked at my mother, who refused to meet my gaze. "You never did." I scrolled down the list. I called again on April 9th. It went to voicemail. I left a message saying I was starting to get worried because the wedding was only a few weeks away, and I hadn't heard from anyone about whether they were coming. No one called back. I continued, my voice a steady, factual recitation. On April 16th, I called your cell, Dad. Voicemail. On April 18th, I texted the family group chat. I looked up. The one I've since discovered I was silently removed from sometime in May. I called the landline 3 times on April 23rd. On April 29th, we sent a final polite email to everyone, reiterating the details and asking for an RSVP. "We never got an email," my mother insisted, clutching at this one straw. "Because Amelia has the password to the family email account," I said, my eyes never leaving my sister's frozen form. "And she deleted it, just like she deleted the first email I sent in March right after I mailed the physical invites." "You can't prove that," Amelia muttered, her defiance weak and hollow. "I can, actually." I swiped to the final piece of evidence, a screenshot of an email account activity log. David showed me how to access it. It turns out that when you're the one who originally set up the family email account 15 years ago, you retain certain administrative rights, even if you never use it. You can see a log of recent activity. I zoomed in on a specific line. This shows that the email I sent on March 20th was opened on March 20th at 7:52 p.m. from an IP address registered to this house. It was opened, and then it was permanently deleted from the trash folder 30 seconds later. I finally let my gaze settle fully on Amelia. Someone didn't want anyone else to see it. The room was silent again. The evidence was laid out, incontrovertible. Jason's face had undergone a complete transformation. The protective husband was gone, replaced by the pragmatic attorney. He was looking at the data, at the timeline, and I could see him connecting the dots. He knew what it meant. "Chloe," my mother said, and her voice was small, almost childlike. It was the most uncertain I had ever heard her. "If you really wanted us there, if it was that important, you could have driven over. You could have knocked on the door and told us to our faces." That was the final straw, the ultimate rewriting of history, placing the burden of effort squarely back on my shoulders. "Mom," I said, and for the first time a sliver of the immense hurt I was feeling leaked into my voice, "I live in Seattle. That's a 4-hour drive, an 8-hour round trip. I made that drive a dozen times in the 2 years before I moved. How many times did any of you come to visit me in the 5 years I've lived there?" I let the question hang in the thick, uncomfortable air. The answer is 0. "You came for Christmas," my dad said, but it was a weak, hesitant statement, not a question. "I drove here for Christmas," I corrected him, my voice gaining strength. "I drove here for Thanksgiving, for Easter, for Mom's birthday, for Amelia's birthday, for your birthday, Dad. I attended Amelia's engagement party, her bridal shower, her bachelorette weekend. I changed my work schedule, I spent hundreds of dollars on gas, and I slept on that awful, lumpy pull-out couch in the guest room that smells like dust and mothballs." I was speaking clearly now, each word a chip of ice. And you know what? In all that time, no one ever asked me about my life. No one ever said, "Hey, Chloe, how's your job going?" Or, "Are you happy in Seattle?" Or, "Tell us about your friends." It was always, always about Amelia. "That's not fair," Amelia protested, but her voice was thin, lacking its usual conviction. "Isn't it?" I asked, turning my full attention to her. The spotlight was finally on me, and I wasn't going to waste it. "When's my birthday, Amelia?" She blinked, thrown by the sudden shift. "What?" "It's a simple question. When is my birthday?" Silence. My mother and father looked down at their plates. Jason studied the ceiling. "It's September 19th, I said into the void. "I turned 33 this year. No one called. No one sent a text. I didn't even get a generic Facebook message from any of you. We've all been so busy," Mom explained when I mentioned it a week later. "But I called you on your birthday, Mom, as I do every single year. I had expensive orchids delivered from that boutique in the city you love so much. I remembered. Why am I so forgettable?" My father's shoulders sagged. He looked old and defeated, and for a moment I felt a pang of sorrow for him. But it wasn't enough to stop me. The dam had broken. "The wedding was beautiful," I said, and my voice softened, the anger beginning to recede, leaving behind a vast, empty sadness. "David and I were married in a small private garden by a river. It was just us, his parents, his sister and brother, and about 20 of our closest friends. 28 people in total. It was small and intimate, and it was perfect." I picked up my phone again and pulled up a photograph. It was of David and me, just after the ceremony. We were laughing, my simple chiffon dress flowing around me, my veil catching the coastal breeze. I looked incandescently, undeniably happy. His mother helped me into my dress. When it became clear that my own father wouldn't be there to walk me down the aisle, his father offered. He walked me down a path strewn with rose petals. We said vows that we had written for each other. Then we all went to a wonderful restaurant overlooking the water and had the most amazing meal. I scrolled to another picture of us on a beach at sunset. We spent 2 weeks in Costa Rica for our honeymoon. We hiked in the rainforest, swam in the ocean, and just lived. It was the best 2 weeks of my life. My mother reached a hand out for the phone, her expression hungry. "Chloe, please, let me see." I pulled it back. "I'm not finished." "Chloe, please," she begged. "I need to say this," I said, my voice firm. I've needed to say it for years. I looked at each of them in turn, making eye contact, forcing them to see me, really see me, for perhaps the first time. "When Amelia got engaged, Mom, you started calling caterers and florists that same night. You created a Pinterest board called Dream Wedding. You poured every ounce of your energy into making her day perfect. Do you have any idea how that felt? To watch you care so deeply, so fervently about her happiness, while treating the possibility of mine as an afterthought, a footnote. We love you both equally," my mother insisted, but the words were rote, hollow, stripped of all meaning. "Do you?" I asked. And it was a genuine question, because from where I'm sitting, it has always, always been the Amelia show. Amelia the head cheerleader, Amelia the homecoming queen, Amelia the sorority president, Amelia who graduated summa cum laude, Amelia who married the wealthy, successful attorney, and I'm just Chloe. Chloe with the normal job and the normal life in a city where no one ever visits. "You never seem to want the same things Amelia wanted," my father said gently, as if explaining something simple to a child. "So that makes me less deserving of your attention?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. "Of your love? Of your basic curiosity?" I shook my head, a wave of grief washing over me. "I have a master's degree in marine biology, Dad. I work for a nonprofit that is actively, tangibly changing coastal preservation laws. I bought my own condo without